Good morning, I am Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, Associate Professor of Pathology. In this class, I will discuss about laboratory diagnosis of cancer. Deaths because of cancer, they are very common nowadays. Do you know what is the main reason for most of the deaths because of cancer? It is because of the late diagnosis of cancer. So by the time they are diagnosed, metastasis has already occurred. So if we can diagnose cancer in early stages, we can save most of the lives. So early diagnosis is the most crucial step in preventing the deaths from cancer. So I kept the theme detect cancer and save life. And this World Cancer Day was observed on February 4th every year. And this year the theme was I am and I will. The meaning of this theme is it's an empowering call for personal commitment, and it represents the power of our actions taken now to reduce the growing impact of cancer. How we can reduce the growing impact of cancer is by eating healthy diet and by doing regular exercise and maintaining healthy lifestyle and avoiding smoking and alcohol, and also by undergoing these regular medical checkups. The main objective of this class is to know about what are the various laboratory investigations for the diagnosis of cancer. So overview of this class. So I will discuss about the various investigations. First is histopathological examination. It's nothing but biopsy. Next one is fine needle aspiration cytology, followed by pap smear and cytological smears, and immunohistochemistry and flow cytometry, and newer molecular and cytogenetic diagnostic methods like fluorescence in situ hybridization, polymerase chain reaction, DNA microarray, and followed by tumor markers. The two important persons in facilitating the correct diagnosis is one is a pathologist and the other is a surgeon. So pathologist, for the diagnosis of benign and malignant tumors, it's not difficult for a pathologist, but for the diagnosis of borderline, that means gray zone, it is difficult for a pathologist. And surgeon is also an important person in facilitating the correct diagnosis, because he is the person who should take the sample from the representative area, and also he should mark the resected ends with the suture. And also he should give the proper history to the pathologist. Then only correct diagnosis is possible. First one is histopathological examination. It's nothing but biopsy. So what is biopsy is removal of a piece of tissue from any pathological lesion or tumor. It's nothing but biopsy. So ideal prerequisites for biopsy is it should be adequate and it should be representative, and also it should be properly preserved. Fixative for the biopsy is formalin. So in this picture you can see the piece of tissue which is preserved in formalin. So after this fixation, what are the steps are? Next one is processing. So in this processing, we will dip the tissue in various grades of alcohol, and after that next step is embedding, and then we keep the tissue in molten wax. So by coming to the room temperature, it will be solidified. So here you can see the pieces of tissue in a solidified wax block, and after that we will keep the block in the microtome and section cutting will be done. So after that these pieces of tissue will come like this as ribbons, and we'll keep the tissue on the slide. So after that routine H&D staining is done, followed by this mounting with the cover slip with the help of TPX. So this is how the biopsy slides will look under the microscope. So upper one is epidermis, and in the dermis you can see the tumor cells, that means pleomorphic squamous cells arranged in the form of cords and sheets, and also you can see the keratin pearl formation also. So the stain used here is routine H&D stain. Next one is frozen section. So what are the advantages of frozen section are? It's rapid and it needs expertise. So within half an hour to 1 hour itself we can give the report, whereas for biopsy it will take 2 to 3 days. So that is the advantage of frozen section. So within half an hour to 1 hour we can give the report, and also we can tell the report for the surgeon within the operation theatre itself whether it is benign or malignant. So other advantages are we can determine the nature of a mass lesion, and also it is useful in evaluating the margins of an excised cancer. That means whether the margins are involved with the tumor or free from the tumor, and also to see whether the entire neoplasm has been removed or not. The machine which is used for the frozen section is cryostat. So this cryostat, it will maintain very low temperature. So after the tissue which has been received by the pathologist from the surgeon, that tissue is placed in a gel-like solution. So because of very low temperatures, it will be solidified. That solidified block is kept here, and with the help of this microtome which is present inside the cryostat, section cutting is done, followed by routine staining and mounting. Next one is fine needle aspiration cytology. So it is a procedure in which the cells will be aspirated along with the surrounding fluid with the help of a small bore needle, followed by cytological examination of the stained smear. So advantages of FNAC are, so it is reliable and also it is rapid. So within one day itself we can give the report, and also it is useful and it is a less invasive procedure. So after the procedure also the patient can go to the home. There is no need for any admission. So it is very useful for superficially palpable masses like thyroid as well as breast and lymph nodes. For deep-seated lesions, that means if the swelling, any lesion is there in the pancreas or any liver, ultrasound guided FNAC is useful. So disadvantage of this FNAC is because of small sample size and small sampling errors, so we may miss the diagnosis sometimes. So this is the picture showing the FNAC procedure which is done on the thyroid swelling. So from the cells from the thyroid swelling, it is aspirated with the help of a syringe. So after that, the material which is there in the syringe, it is placed on a slide, and with the help of a spreader slide, the smears are made. So after that, they are kept in a fixative, followed by routine staining and mounting. So this is the picture how the FNAC slides will look under the microscope. So these are the nothing but thyroid follicular epithelial cells arranged in the form of sheets and papillary pattern. That is about this FNAC. Next one is Pap smear. So Pap smear is useful for the early diagnosis of cervical cancer. So with the help of a Ayer's spatula or brush, the transformation zone of cervix is circumferentially scraped and these cells are smeared on a slide, and further it is stained with this Pap-Nicolau method. This Pap smear is useful for screening of carcinoma of cervix. So we can diagnose the cancer very early, so often at an in situ stage. So this is the picture showing the abnormal Pap smear, showing numerous malignant cells, showing this pleomorphism, and also the nucleus is hyperchromatic, and also there is increased nuclear to cytoplasmic ratio, and in between them we can see many neutrophils also. So first one is normal Pap smear picture. So normally the cells should be like this in the first picture. That means the nucleus size is small when compared to the cytoplasm. Next one is LCL picture. See here the nuclear size is increased. That means there is increased NC ratio, and also the nucleus is hyperchromatic, and also the nuclear membranes are irregular. Next two pictures are high grade squamous intraepithelial lesion picture. See here the nuclear size is also very much increased. That means more NC ratio when compared to LCL. Also the nuclear size is very much increased. Cytoplasm, it is somewhat decreased in size, and also the nucleus is hyperchromatic, hyperchromatism of the nucleus, and also the nuclear membranes are irregular. So these cytological smears are useful to evaluate some other forms of suspected malignancy in which the tumor cells are easily accessible or shed, such as in case of endometrial carcinoma, lung as well as bladder, prostatic carcinomas and gastric carcinomas. And also it is useful for the identification of tumor cells in various fluids like ascitic fluid, pleural, joint and cerebrospinal fluids. This is the picture. Here you can see the malignant cell in the center, and also you can compare the difference by comparing with the size of other cells. The malignant cell, it is showing more NC ratio, the size of the nucleus is very much increased, and also the nucleus is hyperchromatic, and also the surrounding, by comparing with the other cells, we can note the difference. Immunohistochemistry mainly uses these antibodies. With the availability of specific antibodies, IHC has greatly facilitated the identification of cell products and surface markers. The importance of IHC is it is useful in the categorization of undifferentiated malignant tumors. Some tumors in the routine H&E sections, they look similar. That means anaplastic carcinoma, lymphomas, melanomas and sarcomas, they look similar in routine H&D sections. But it should be clearly differentiated because the treatment and prognosis of each of these tumors is different. Then what to do is we have to do IHC. So if IHC for cytokeratin is positive, it indicates the origin of the cell is from epithelial origin. That means it is a carcinoma. So if IHC for desmin is positive, it indicates the origin is from smooth muscle. That means it is a sarcoma. So this is the picture showing the IHC cytokeratin is positive. That means the origin of the cell is from epithelium and it is a carcinoma. Usually the tumor cells, if it is positive, it will exhibit brown color. Next is determination of site of origin of metastatic tumors. In some patients, usually they will present with metastasis, but the primary site of origin is not known. In such case, IHC is useful. Immunohistochemical detection of tissue-specific and organ-specific antigens in the metastatic deposit can helpful in the identification of tumor source. For example, if PSA is positive in the metastatic deposit, it indicates the origin is from prostate. That means if IHC thyroglobulin is positive, it indicates the origin is from thyroid carcinoma. That means the primary is from thyroid carcinoma. Next is detection of molecules which have prognostic or therapeutic significance. IHC detection of hormone receptors in the breast. For example, ER/PR positive breast cancer cells has better prognosis when compared to receptor negative breast cancer cells. And these cells, cancer cells, they are susceptible to anti-estrogen therapy. Next investigation is flow cytometry. Flow cytometry is nothing but it is a correlated multi-parametric analysis of single cells as the cells in a suspension flow in a single file across a beam of laser. So in this the picture showing the principle of flow cytometry. Usually the cells will move in a single file and it is intersected by a laser light. So light scattering it will occur in two ways. So this is the forward scatter and this is the side scatter. The forward scatter it will correlate with the cell size and the side scatter it correlates with the granularity of the cells. So and it is detected by photodetectors, and in the photodetectors it will convert the photons into electrical impulses, and in the computer these electrical impulses they are converted into a digital signal, and in the computer these digital signals they are stored in the form of a histogram. So in the hematology usually the analyzers they will work by this flow cytometric principle. Here we will run the samples and we will get the result on the computer screen. So flow cytometry is mainly useful for the study of blood, bone marrow aspirates and lymph node suspensions. It is mainly useful in the diagnosis of leukemias and lymphomas, and also it can measure the membrane antigens and the DNA content of the tumor cells. The other investigations are newer molecular and cytogenetic diagnostic methods. First one is FISH. The full form of FISH is fluorescence in situ hybridization. Next one is PCR. The full form of PCR is polymerase chain reaction. Next is DNA microarray. First is fluorescence in situ hybridization. Usually this fluorescence in situ hybridization it will use the DNA probes, and its DNA probe is labeled with fluorescent dyes so that it will recognize the particular chromosomal region, and this DNA probe it will hybridize to its homologous genomic sequence and the specific chromosomal region is labeled so that it can be visualized under a fluorescent microscope. So mainly useful in the detection of the chromosomal abnormalities like aneuploidies, microdeletions, complex translocations and also amplifications. Types of, for example, amplification in breast cancer, HER2/neu amplification will be there, and also neuroblastomas, NMYC amplifications will be there. And the other use is mapping newly isolated genes of interest to their chromosomal loci. The other use is spectral karyotyping. So in this spectral karyotyping, it will use a combination of fluorochromes and appropriate computer generated signals. The entire human genome can be visualized. It is a multicolor FISH which is done in a child to know the underlying abnormality. See here each chromosome has a unique color. The abnormality there, here the arrow is pointing, the abnormality is there in the chromosome 9 which has derived an additional material from the chromosome 22. Next investigation is PCR, polymerase chain reaction. PCR, it is very precise and it is used to amplify or copy a specific target from a mixture of DNA molecules. So can multiply copies of a segment of DNA. This is the principle of PCR. First step is separation of the nucleic acid strand. Second one is annealing of the short DNA fragment, that is addition of primer on the specific sequence. Third one is elongation of the short fragments by the Taq polymerase. Fourth is finally detection by the specific probes. Uses of PCR. It is useful in the diagnosis and prognosis of malignant neoplasms and also in the detection of minimal residual disease and also in the diagnosis of this hereditary predisposition of cancer and guiding therapy with oncoprotein directed drugs. First application of PCR is diagnosis of malignant neoplasms. It is useful in the distinguishing between monoclonal and polyclonal proliferations of the lymph node. Monoclonal proliferation, it is neoplastic, whereas polyclonal, it is reactive. So PCR is useful in those distinguishing between monoclonal and polyclonal proliferation of a lymph node. Next is diagnosis of certain translocations. For example, if translocation is there between chromosomal 11 and 22, it indicates it is a Ewing sarcoma. Next one is prognosis of malignant neoplasms. Certain genetic alterations are associated with poor prognosis. For example, in case of neuroblastoma, amplification of NMAC gene and deletion of 1p, it indicates poor prognosis. Next is detection of minimal residual disease. What is this minimal residual disease? Is persistence of tumor cells even after the treatment is called as minimal residual disease. So after the treatment of patients with leukemia and lymphoma, the presence of minimal residual disease and the onset of relapse can be monitored with this PCR. How is? By detection of these nucleic acid sequences which are unique to a malignant clone. For example, in case of CML, detection of these PCR-ABL transcripts indicates the presence of the minimal residual disease in the CML treated patients. Next one is diagnosis of hereditary predisposition of cancer. Certain mutations, for example, in case that means mutation of BRCA1, BRCA2 and RET proto-oncogene. So if these mutations are there, it indicates high risk of developing certain cancers. So that it is useful for the physician to guide the patient to undergo regular screening program and also useful for the surgeon to guide any prophylactic surgery and also it is also useful to counsel the relatives who are at risk of developing cancer. Next application of PCR is guiding therapy with oncoprotein directed drugs. Usually the chemotherapeutic agents, they target the oncoproteins. For example, in case of acute promyelocytic leukemia, the target oncoprotein is PML RARA fusion gene. In case of CML, the target fusion gene is BCR-ABL gene. And also in lung cancer, the targets are abdominal growth factor receptor mutations and ALK gene rearrangements. In case of melanoma, the therapy is directed against these BRAF mutations. Next is DNA microarray. So it's the most common method for the large scale analysis of gene expression. So it will cover the entire human genome. This DNA microarray, it will analyze the genomic amplifications and deletions at very high resolution. So this DNA microarray, it will improve our ability to stratify the patient's risk and also it will guide the treatment beyond the limits of histology and pathological staging. So it is useful for the accurate diagnosis and also in the assessing the prognosis of cancer patients. It will combine the both morphologic as well as molecular techniques. This is the procedure how the DNA microarray is done. First, the mRNA is extracted from normal tissue and tumor tissue. From the mRNA, cDNA is synthesized. In normal tissue, the cDNA is labeled in green, whereas in tumor tissue, the cDNA is labeled in red. Both of them, they are hybridized to an array. And this array, it is a solid support and it contains thousands of genes. So again, this post-hybridization signals are detected by a laser scanner. So if the color is red, it indicates the expression of the gene is higher in the tumor tissue. So green indicates the expression of the gene is higher in the normal tissue. Black color indicates no difference in the expression between normal tissue and tumor tissue. DNA microarray is mainly useful in the identification of molecular targets rather than histopathological diagnosis. So it is useful in the targeted therapies. For example, in case of lung, the mutated gene is mutated, KIT mutations will be there. In case of breast, mutated HER2/neu and also in case of prostate, mutated epidermal growth factor receptor, and also BRAF mutations in colon, and in case of brain, mutated phosphatidylinositol 3 kinase. So treatment again is directed against these mutated genes. So it's nothing but targeted therapy. So different cancers sometimes they have same mutations. For example, mutation in the BRAF. So BRAF is a component of RAS signaling pathway, and treatment is given by these BRAF inhibitors. For example, melanoma, papillary thyroid carcinoma, hairy cell leukemia, Langerhans cell histiocytosis, and colonic adenocarcinoma. All of these tumors, they have same BRAF mutation. So that what is the treatment is? Treatment by this BRAF inhibitor. Next one is tumor markers. This is the last one, and it is an important question. Tumor markers is an important question, and previously asked question for you. Many times it is asked in exams. What are tumor markers? Tumor markers are nothing but tumor-associated enzymes or hormones. So in some cases, it can contribute to the detection of cancer. It is not a definitive diagnosis of cancer, but in some cases, it can contribute to detection of cancer. The main use of tumor marker is it will determine the effectiveness of therapy, and also to see whether there is recurrence of the tumor even after the treatment. Examples of tumor markers. First one is hormones. Human chorionic gonadotropin. It is elevated in trophoblastic tumors and non-seminomatous testicular tumors. Second is calcitonin. It is elevated in medullary carcinoma of thyroid. Third one is catecholamine, elevated in pheochromocytoma. Next one is ectopic hormones like ACTH and ADH, elevated in small cell carcinoma. Next one is parathyroid hormone related protein, elevated in squamous cell carcinoma. Insulin-like substance, elevated in ovarian carcinoma. Next is erythropoietin, elevated in renal cell carcinoma. Next is oncofetal antigens, alpha-fetoprotein, elevated in liver cell cancer and non-seminomatous germ cell tumors of testis. Next one is CEA, carcinoembryogenic antigen, elevated in carcinoma of colon, pancreas, lung, stomach and heart. Next is isoenzymes, prostatic acid phosphatase and elevated in prostatic carcinoma. Next is neuron-specific kinase, elevated in small cell carcinoma of lung and neuroblastoma. Next is specific proteins, immunoglobulins, elevated in multiple myeloma and other gammopathies. Next is PSA and prostate specific membrane antigen, elevated in prostate cancer. Next is mucins and other glycoproteins. CA125, elevated in ovarian carcinoma, and CA99, elevated in colon and pancreatic cancer. CA153, elevated in breast cancer. Next one is cell-free DNA markers. For example, mutated P53, APC and RAS in stool and serum indicates colon cancer. Mutated P53 RAS mutants in the stool and serum indicates pancreatic cancer. Mutated P53 and RAS mutants in the sputum and serum. In the sputum, it indicates lung cancer. Next one is mutated P53 in urine indicates bladder cancer. Summary of this class. Several sampling procedures exist for the diagnosis of tumors. First one is biopsy. It is nothing but histopathological examination. In many cases, this is useful. Next one is FNAC, fine needle aspiration cytology. It is especially useful in case of superficial swellings like thyroid, lymph node, and also in breast. In case of deep-seated lesions, for example, in case of liver and pancreas, also ultrasound-guided FNAC is useful. Next one is Pap smear. It is useful in the early diagnosis of cervical cancer. Next one is cytological smears. That means detection of tumor cells in the ascitic fluid as well as in the pleural fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, etc. Next one is IHC, immunohistochemistry. That means the use of this IHC is in routine HND sections. In some cases, we cannot differentiate the tumors. It will look quite similar. So in such cases, IHC is useful in differentiating these undifferentiated tumors, and also to know the site of origin of metastatic tumor. In some people, usually they will present with metastasis, but the site of primary is not known. In such cases, IHC is helpful, and also in detection of molecules that have prognostic and therapeutic significance. That means presence of ERPR receptors in the tumor cells of breast cancer indicates good prognosis. Next one is flow cytometry. So mainly useful in case of blood, bone marrow, aspiration, lymph node suspensions, and it is useful in diagnosis of leukemias and lymphomas mainly. Next one is fluorescence in situ hybridization. So it is useful in the diagnosing the chromosomal abnormalities like deletions, translocations, amplifications, and spectral karyotyping. Next is PCR, polymerase chain reaction. It is useful in the diagnosis and prognosis of malignant neoplasms, and also in the detection of minimal residual disease. Or what is the minimal residual disease? Is persistence of tumor cells even after the treatment is called as minimal residual disease. Next is hereditary predisposition of cancer detection and presence of certain mutations in the tumor suppressor genes like BRCA1 and BRCA2. Usually it indicates high risk of cancer. It is detected by this PCR. Next is DNA microarray. It is useful in the large scale analysis of gene expression and also mainly useful for the molecular diagnosis and prognosis of the tumors and also useful for guiding the targeted therapy. Last is tumor marker. So it is a tumor associated enzyme or hormone. Examples of tumor markers are human chorionic gonadotropin as well as other examples are carcinoembryogenic antigen, alpha fetoprotein, PSA, CA125, CA19, many are there. And the use of tumor marker is it will determine the effectiveness of therapy and also to see whether there is recurrence of the tumor after the treatment. So prevention is better than cure. For cancer prevention, you have to maintain a healthy weight and daily you have to do regular physical activity for 30 minutes and mostly you have to eat vegetables and fruits because they contain these antioxidants and limit the red meat and avoid the processed meat. Thank you.